So good afternoon. This is the call to order. Good afternoon and welcome everyone. Before we begin the meeting, I would like to acknowledge that the city of Tempe is in the Salt River Valley, which is the ancestral home of the Acamel, O'odham, Pima, and Peeposh Maricopa Indian communities, whose care and keeping of this land allow us to be here today. So let's officially call the May meeting of the Sustainable and Livable Communities Committee to order. It's a mouthful. I'd like to welcome Sustainability Commissioner and Barbie Burke and Commissioner Chair Kendon Young to the meeting. I think they'll be tuning in at some point. So as you might expect, our committee covers topics related to sustainable and livable communities. Who knew from the title? But note that no formal votes or decisions about city programs, policies, or budgets will happen here tonight. Our role is actually to explore various topics with staff and stakeholders and community members and fellow elected officials as we have today, and to make recommendations to our council colleagues in the future. We want this process to be transparent, inclusive, and easy for you to be a part of whenever you choose to be a part of it. So you can share your thoughts with us by filling out a comment card about any item on a meeting agenda, or by reaching out directly to us with other thoughts, questions, ideas. Councilmember Adams and I, and Councilmember Adams chairs the committee with me, are very open to any kind of public discussion or meeting, so feel free to please email us at any time. Sunday, when we host meetings in person again, and we think that will be our August meeting, it'll be much easier for people to speak in meetings and engage, but for now, in this virtual environment, we do need you to fill out the comment card in advance so it can be read into the record for any agendized item. So the link to the comment cards can be found on our committee webpage, which is tempe.gov and then /SLC. And you'll find contact information for committee members and staff there for non-agendized questions as well. So now that we got all the business out of the way, Councilmember Adams?
Yes, Councilmember QB, thank you very much. And I appreciate you addressing me, and I'm just looking forward to having a really good meeting today and to moving forward. So I guess I do have a motion to approve the minutes. Do we need to do that today from last week or last month?
Yeah, no objections to the meeting minutes. So we don't formally vote, but with no objections, the minutes are approved as we consensus, but that sounds great. Yeah, they're from our February and March meetings. So thanks.
Yes. Yes, thank you, Councilmember QB.
So the next item on our agenda is item 3, public comments. And we, as we mentioned before, we welcome public comment. According to Arizona open meeting law, the committee may only discuss matters listed on the agenda. Matters brought up by the public under public comment that are not listed on the agenda cannot be discussed by the committee. A 3-minute time limit per person is in effect. Alex, do we have any public comment cards for this meeting?
The public comment card, we received one from Barbie Burke from Sustainability Commission, and that she just says she looked forward to this meeting.
That's great. Yeah, Barbie is a businesswoman and long devoted to sustainability topics in the community, and I'm so pleased that she's now on the commission, so we can call her Commissioner Burke. So the next item on our agenda is item 4A, current items updates. But Councilmember Adam, if it's okay with you, I wanted to change the order of some of the items because we have guests with us that we'd like to move up so we don't have them waiting. Is that okay with you? So we wanted to move down to new items for consideration and take 4B1 first. And then
sure, that's fine.
Okay, great.
Yeah, that's
4B1 first, and 4B2, which is a Tucson stormwater infrastructure presentation, and then we'll do the BRT presentation. So thanks so much. So great. So do we have Vice Mayor Cunningham here just yet? Let's see.
Yes, he is in the audience. So let me elevate him. One moment.
Great. And you need not elevate such an illustrious figure because Vice Mayor Cunningham is well known across the state for his safeguarding of Tucson's water supply and for Arizona's water supply. He's seen as a real leader in sustainable water management across the state. So I'll now turn it over to the Honorable Paul Cunningham of the Tucson City Council, and he and his team will kick off things, a discussion about the Tucson stormwater infrastructure. Vice Mayor Cunningham.
Yeah, I believe we have a video that we can show from Tucson staff, and then
Sure.
and then Vice Mayor Cunningham can lead the question and answer afterwards.
That sounds good, Braden Kay. Let's let it.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for this invitation to let you and share some information about what we're doing down here at the city of Tucson. I am Irene O'Gara.
I just received a message from the vice mayor regarding to not show the video.
If he wants to do his part first and then we can show the video after, we're fine to do that if that's to his liking.
That sounds fine to me, Alex. We're going to be very flexible here. So if we can elevate the vice mayor.
The vice mayor is elevated. Let me unmute you one moment. Give me one sec. Vice Mayor?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we
I can't even
can.
get my camera on this. I'm trying to get my camera on, and it just won't work. I can't even get the camera on, unfortunately.
No worries, we can just hear
Oh,
you.
I think we're almost here. Hold on. I think we're almost here. Okay. I still can't get my camera on. I don't know why.
That's okay, we can skip that. We'll just be entertained by your mellifluous tones.
So for whatever reason, I can't get the camera on, and excuse me. So the bottom line is that we've been working really hard in the city of Tucson over the last 12 years on different programs that allow us to capture and sustain our water. I mean, it's probably the thing that I'm most happy about. And it's our biggest accomplishment on the council. We've had multiple programs. It started with a conservation fee that we set up in the that we set up as early as 2008. And to give a little background, this program goes back to what I'd say the 90s. Tucson was engaged in something called the Water Wars. And essentially, some of the more optimistic people said Tucson had maybe 30 to 40 years of water, or even 50 years of water. Some of the true pessimists said we had 15 years of water left, and things had to be done. At that time, Tucson was not taking its full cap allotment. And one thing you're going to find out as we talk about this is that water policy and good water policy is holistic. It is holistic in the sense that sometimes it's okay to use some of your water if you're using it for righteous things, i.e. xeriscaping, i.e. Ability to cool areas within town that is not all hardscape, i.e. being able to put in softscape or permeable landscaping, which helps nullify or negate heat island effects. So there's all these like moving parts, and if you don't have enough water at all, you've got to start there. So Tucson gets their cap allotment, but it definitely, even for me at 20 years old, freaked a lot of people out. And we said, what can we do? So we started with just kind of easy things like low flow toilets. We said, hey, you know, instead of using 7 gallons of flush, we're going to incentivize to 5 gallons of flush and 2.5 gallons of flush for toilets. That's kind of where it started. And we went to different public partners like TUSD within the city limits and said, hey, why don't we use the faucets that stop? Now those are kind of low-hanging fruit. Lots of different communities around the country use those, especially ones that want to conserve water. And that's a good thing. But then we started talking about how do we take this to the next piece? Well, the first thing we did was the conservation fee. The conservation fee is a 13-cent fee per CCF inside the city limits. And we said what we want to do is set up programs that allow things like curb cuts, things like hardscape, gray water, rainwater harvesting. We're going to put a conservation fee in place that allows those programs to progress, that allows the programs to take hold. And that's where it started. A few years later, we added another fee, the green stormwater fee and the GSI. And that fee also allows us to do other things where we take hardscape like a street, and instead of that runoff just going into a drainage, that runoff will go into some type of intermediate softscape collection point, which will grow into a garden. A good example would be like if you have a median that is, let's say you pave the inside of a median. Well, instead of paving the inside of a median, why don't you make it dirt, build a curb around it that can collect water and actually trap it and ensure that there's nothing below that, so that water permeates down, and then plant some green native trees or native plants inside that space. That's just a good example. And it sounds like total common sense, but it's a lot harder than you think, because engineers, project managers, developers, they're not sure about all that. They're not thinking of that stuff. They're thinking about bottom line. They're thinking about aesthetics. They're thinking about all kinds of different things. And at the end of the day, part of it is we had to educate them on how to do these things. The other thing we had to do was we had to build a coalition of community partners that would buy into this. So we built the Tucson with the Sierra Club and Casa Maria, which is a Catholic social service provider, and the Sierra Club and the Sonora Desert Alliance, and all these different groups came in and said, hey, this is what we're going to do. And this is how we can improve our ability to leverage all the resources we have to capture stormwater. We also partnered with the county's regional stormwater authority. And again, they helped, but they're not where the city is. We also educated folks about conservation, gray water, and rainwater harvesting for all new commercial builds, and we incentivized it. So these were all things that were there. And ultimately, what you get is you have a much lower per capita water use in the city. We have a incredible use of the cap allotment, and that we've been able to start putting excess water in for recharge. Recharge, retention, reclamation are the third part. When we talked about water being holistic, you have to have all of those things. So what we did was we'd say, all right, we're going to find a way to take our reclaimed water, and even if we can't get it to a AAA triple plus rating, which is the highest cleaned reclaimed water you can get, sans doing like reverse osmosis or doing the electrolysis which are the two most advanced processes in the country. Sans doing those two things, what can we do with our reclaimed water? Well, we're going to clean it, and then we're going to pump it through a purple system, and that's where a lot of our green space in the city is maintained. Not only that, we get recharge credits from some of that recirculated water. Then we figured out a way we could recharge it by not hardscaping our washes and having every single storm's drainage program a concrete format, like, you know, the finale in the movie Grease, but instead having a softscape and having a healthy wash with trees and desert brush and all the other things, we were able to recharge. The first project we just did is the Santa Cruz Heritage Project, and despite some concerns from the county, we were able to pull it off, and we're going to recharge some 92.8% of the 1,800 acre feet we're dumping into that river. Not only that, Tucson now has a creek or a ribbon of creek that's going to run it's quasi-naturally through the city, 15 miles long, and that's all recharged. All that does is replenish main wells around Tucson. Most of our groundwater has increased in the last decade, and in some cases as much as 30 to 40 feet. So we're really happy with the progress we've made in Tucson with all those things. And I finally got my camera working.
See, it's good to see your face.
Thank you. Sorry about that. And then while I was scrambling with all that, I actually have a bunch of prepared notes and I couldn't find them because I had 6 people talking to me at once right now. So let me see if I can bring those prepared notes up. But I don't think I did too bad for winging it.
Could I ask you a question while you're...
Shoot, yeah.
Yeah, so how are the fees for the conservation fee and the stormwater fee assessed? Is that commercial, residential, both? How is that money collected? And
Residential. 13 cents a CCF comes out to some $1.10, $1.20 per customer. In Tucson, we have an average CCF use per household of right around 10, like that's the going rule. It's actually gone down to 9 over the years, which is even, which truth be told is even better. But the bottom line is that the way to get there is we get about $6 million between the two. We get $3 million at we get $3 million on the conservation fee, and we get about, on the green stormwater infrastructure fee, we get another $3 million. It's about 13 cents per CCF. And the conservation fee is for, it's part of it was part of a broader rate increase. It's for like community members being engaged. It's legally restricted to pay only for conservation programs like Santa Cruz Heritage, which is the thing I mentioned about recharge, low flow toilets, rainwater harvesting. It pays for those incentives in homes that save water directly. The green stormwater infrastructure fee is more, it's evolving more into like a grant program where neighborhoods can go in and take a hardscape and go, hey, look, let's make this into a quasi softscape. Let's find that collection point where water naturally drains in our neighborhood and make that into a community garden, make that into a green space, make that into a xeriscape desert space or a natural space, and allow that water to naturally permeate back into the aquifer. So these are all things that that we do in order to maximize how we have just maximize our water resources in general. Finally, we have a rainwater harvesting, commercial rainwater harvesting requirement where all new commercial must have 50% of their rainwater be 50% of their irrigation be harvested water. And that's really a UDC code. That's part of your UDC. The way we were able to get these done, and I think that's where you're going with this question, is you've got to build a coalition. It's really old school community organizing. And what I've learned about community organizing and been kind of successful at is most of the time, if what you're doing is righteous and true, it's really about educating. It's about educating people on how important this was. And we had a good jumping off point because, like I said, in 1996, Tucson was in a situation where there was a public opinion that we only had we had less than a half century of water left. So people understand that for Tucson to be, if we don't figure out a way to make our long-term water usage sustainable, there will be no Tucson in a century. And truth be told, despite the success of the Salt River Project and and you're fortunate that multiple farms have actually shut down in the valley over the years, you guys are still using tremendous amount of water, and that Salt River project, that SRP, is not generating the amount of acre feet it was 30, 40 years ago. You just don't have the same snow melt that the Mogollon Rim had 50 years ago. And so that, and also the Phoenix area has grown exponentially in those times. So you guys are kind of in the same place we were 30 years ago. And it's good that you're having this conversation now, because over the next, I'd say, decade, Phoenix is really going to need it. The other thing I'd say is that Phoenix and Tucson used to be about equals in the 70s as far as temperature, and that's changed in the past probably 15 years. And now, you know, the aggregate day in the summer, there's a good 7 or 8 degrees difference in heat between the Phoenix area and the Tucson area. And that's kind of been an interesting offshoot of this. And then that's partly because we've maintained our natural green flow here. Now, the drought last year didn't hurt us, along with wildfires, but I think we've been good stewards of our water, and we've been really responsible in ensuring that we are using every possible tool in the toolbox long term for Tucson. The last thing I tell you is be surprised on where your coalition comes from. The usual suspects, the Sierra Club, whatever conservation alliance you have, they're going to be there. But you got to go out to the JCs. You got to go out to Greater Phoenix. You got to go out to even the business community, even the Chamber of Commerce would support something like this if it's done right.
And is there a reason why you didn't have the fees assessed to commercial customers as well and only to residential customers?
Yes, it's state law. There
There
are some regulations on what we're allowed to do and what we're not allowed to do, but I know that commercial does pay some of those fees. It's not all the fee structure for commercial and it isn't all just corralled into residential, but there are definitely some barriers in state law on what you're allowed to do. Your water folks will be able to kind of explain to you on that.
Oh, very good. Councilmember Adams, do you have any questions? Or I know we have Commissioner Kenan Young on the line as well. Are there any questions we have from staff or from our commissioners?
I don't have any questions. Very informative presentation, and I like the ideas that the Vice Mayor suggested. And you know, Tucson, it does, when you drive through Tucson, it's like there's all these trees and, you know, wild animals still, and it's just really a beautiful city and the way they've done it. So I appreciate you taking your time, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor. I gave you a promotion there, to present this to us. So thank you.
A couple of things I'll say, and this is kind of the crux of it, if you will, and that is that one, I'm no longer the vice mayor. I've been vice mayor. We have a rotating schedule, but for whatever reason, my colleagues had me serve as vice mayor almost every single year for the last 6 years. So I'm the only guy in the council that's been vice mayor that many times. But truth be told, I'm no longer the vice mayor, but I appreciate the promotion. I kind of went with it, but I want to be the the other thing is, the other thing is that I think, if I am not mistaken, I can probably, if I can figure this out, I think I can get the PowerPoint. I can do the PowerPoint if you want. I've got it now queued up. I was going to do so the video they sent you is like a video of someone narrating the PowerPoint. I actually have the PowerPoint, and if I can figure out how to share my screen, I can probably, I can share my screen now. I can probably go through this PowerPoint. Is that all right?
That'd be great because we're recording this and other people will get a chance to see it. And it would be great to have that for the record. Thank you.
Okay, so if I share, can you guys see it okay?
Yes.
So here is our how we institutionalizing the green water storm water infrastructure. And, you know, basically I'm going this way. Basically, GSI is the green stormwater infrastructure fee. That's what, when I say GSI. And then this is talking about all the many participants and why we do it. And I kind of gave the history lesson already. And one of the things is, here's like a good diagram of what an LID is. It's a low impact development where you have water flowing, like right here, as you can see, water would flow off of the curb, and then you actually build almost a crevice that captures water in, and now natural vegetation can thrive there. And that's kind of one of the things that happens. And people are like, well, duh, we should totally do that. It's not as easy as it sounds, because whenever you do any type of development, there's grading, there's all these different things. And it used to be 50 years ago, they just want the water to drain in a storm and leave and, you know, go into the washes and eventually end up into the Salt River, or in Tucson's case, the Santa Cruz or Rolito River. Well, that was 50 years ago. Now we realize that natural vegetation in anywhere near is actually worth just as much. So this is like one of those things about the water cycle, how GSIs basically promote the water cycle and enhance the water cycle. It's going to lead to natural weather. It's going to lead to more shade. It's going to lead to lower heat island effect. It's going to lead to it's better for the earth in a very micro way, but it really is. So all those things happen, and that's kind of what that slide, that's the purpose of this slide here. And here again, this slide just kind of, it really lays it out so that it's a person who is not a landscape architect or an engineer or even a regular architect, but just one of your run-of-the-mill constituents can go through and see diagrams like this and go, okay, now I understand, that totally makes sense. And one of the things you find out is that it's much easier to build a coalition when what you're doing is the right thing. It's much easier if you just educate, and that's what these are for. So here's like the old school, the natural process where there's nothing built. And then there's the gray infrastructure process, and that's, you know, like I said, back in the day where when it's raining, we just want the water to run off the hardscape and go into the pipe system, the sewage, the wash, whatever. But with GSI, it's actually a true hybrid. And remember, off of that, not only right here off of this rooftop can you water a tree, but you can even pick up a rainwater harvesting tank and do all your outside irrigation at it. In a place like Tucson, Arizona, we get between 12 and 14 inches of water a year, which you think, well, that's actually pretty sustainable. Well, sort of and not sort of. We have just like Phoenix, or just like the Valley area, we have a period of time called the monsoon, but that represents about 65% of our rainfall per year. So yeah, we get a foot of rainfall every year, but we get 7 inches of it in a 6-week period. And so it's a little bit less manageable. That's why you have to have these things to kind of set it up. So how do you institute it? Well, you start with water conservation, and you do incentives, and you give emergency water conservation. You put in some plumbing codes. You put in residential grade water. And we have each of those conservation ordinances. This is the City of Tucson website where you can find out about them. Then we talk about kind of GSI funding. That's also the conservation fee and GSI funding. 13 cents per CCF, up to between 45 cents to $1.50 per customer. No more than $2 for like 80% of our customers does it go into that. And if you go back, starting in 2010, kind of after the water wars and the cap water was established, you see kind of how we went about all these different things. One of the things that this PowerPoint talks about a lot is curb cuts. That's taking a median or taking a side curb and making literally a cut where water naturally collects there anywhere, where you'd have a catchment, and actually making some type of xeriscape softscape that promotes, again, healthy vegetation and just natural desert. Again, this comes back to more of the programs and the rest of the PowerPoint. As they go through this timeline of all the things that happened, the main thing was on the coalition building side was done by the ward offices and the council we just built partners. First of all, you've got to build a coalition of your colleagues. So there's more of you to get behind it. And then after your colleagues is there, someone's got to carry the ball and be the champion and be sure to set the program up and see that there's follow through. Finally, the only way to do that is to cultivate public support, and you do that through the organizations that exist. Here's a few of them: the University of Arizona, City of Tucson. But I think the bigger ones that should be pointed out are, like, again, Casa Marina, the Watershed Management Group, which was a group of conservationists who understood also about building and developing. We had the Metropolitan Payment Alliance. We've had, which is, again, a group that represents developers, Tucson Clean and Beautiful, the Living Streets Alliance, the Community Food Bank, even the Arizona School of Social Work, the Arizona State University School of Social Work, a little nod to Tempe there. I am a graduate, did some things. So all those things is how we were able to institutionalize this program. Here's a couple of pictures of, where's my favorite one? Well, let me find you my favorite one. Here, where is it? I got it somewhere. I have a good picture of one. I can't. All I know is that here's a decent picture. This is like 1970s, 1980s, where my arrow is, if you can see my cursor. And that's when you don't have curb cuts and you're not properly drained. And then here's what that same area can look like if you're properly draining it into green space areas, and that underground water can store. And then the other one is, and I'm missing the slide on this, but I have a picture of one of an area in Tucson where we cut a curb, and all that was there before was a yellow painted line over asphalt. And now what it is I'm going to stop my share there. Now all it is it's like 5 trees. There is no irrigation in there. There's no artificial irrigation in that project. And it is a multitude of very well kept native desert plants. I should mention really quick, xeriscaping, when I talk about that, that is planting native desert plants. You want to use stuff that thrives in your environment. If you're bringing in invasive species or you're bringing in foreign species, yeah, palm trees can grow in Phoenix. I get it. But that may not be that. There's a reason that they didn't. You know what I mean? So that's kind of some of the stuff I'd point out. But I really appreciate Councilwoman Kuby and the rest of you guys hosting me today, and I'll answer any questions now.
Well, thanks so much. And I know I so respect you, Councilmember Cunningham, and also your entire council and the mayor and the whole Million Trees program in Tucson. I think that, that old saying about the best time to plant a tree was 7 years ago. You are really walking the talk in Tucson. And I so appreciate gaining this information. I'm hoping Braden Kay is our sustainability director. I'm hoping that we could perhaps have the Sustainability Commission start to look at this issue for the next time we do our water rates, if not sooner. But if we could include discussion about this in, with the commission. And
and remember, you guys have differential water rates up there, so you guys are actually ahead of us on that. So we're on our way there.
Councilmember Kuby.
We have the first shortage declared on the Colorado this summer. So yes, Councilmember Adams.
Yes, thank you. I think I would like to go down and take a look at some of these if Councilmember Cunningham would be willing to kind of give us a tour and see firsthand some of these great examples. I'm a visual learner, and I just think it would be super helpful if you and I go down there.
Absolutely.
Okay.
My team would love to host you, and you guys should both come, and we'll bring you around. We'll go see the mayor. We'll make an afternoon around it. Sounds like fun to me.
Okay, thank you.
It's a great plan. Thank you so much. We'll plan on that. So, and I also want to mention, you may not be aware, but there's a Greater Phoenix Metro Green Infrastructure Handbook. And it was developed, Scottsdale led the way. Scottsdale's been a great leader in green building and green infrastructure. It's a whole low impact development guidebook, a technical guidebook for staff. And the Sustainable Cities Network at ASU, where I work, was fundamental in bringing that project forward. And I'll staff too, because maybe there could be some.
Yeah, and we have the green infrastructure handbooks. We have handbooks for, it's all part of that's in the UCD, in the design manual, and that's what you're, UCD, in the UDC, in your design manual. And remember, that's a lot of what a council does, right? I mean, we're at the end, I tell people all the time, really, we're a very glorified zoning board sometimes. And so that's what all city councils go through. And the bottom line is that you've got to have that, you've got to have those encouragements, and you've got to have incentives for builders to follow through on that when they do. I don't know if you guys are you guys in the same situation we are, or are you more boxed in? I mean, does Tempe have open space around it, or are you guys kind of surrounded by multiple towns now?
Yeah, we're pretty much boxed in. We're pretty much landlocked, so we're growing up, not out.
Well, as you grow up, believe it or not, there's opportunity there to actually save more waters per door. You could go into a higher density, have more people living in one property, in one lot, and actually use less water. So there's all kinds of opportunities.
Because we know most water use, is landscaping and not interior water use. But well, I guess we should be moving on to our other items. But we so appreciate you coming to our meeting, and thank you so much, Council Member.
Thanks for having me. You guys have a great afternoon. And what is it? I guess I'll go. Is it Forks Up? And also Bear Down. I got to do both. Undergrad and grad. Have a great day, you guys.
Equal opportunity.
Thanks so much.
Oh, and by the way, go Suns. All right.
Yes, of course.
So Councilmember Kuby and Councilmember Adams. So the Sustainability Commission has already seen all the Tucson work. They are very encouraging of us moving forward on green infrastructure. So probably the next step is to work with engineering, transportation, and community development in terms of how we move forward on code changes and adopting more green infrastructure. Also exploring with the water department what it would take to do a green stormwater infrastructure fund modeled on Tucson. So if you're interested in asking for staff follow-up on green infrastructure from the various departments required, that's something we can do.
I appreciate that, Brayden, but I still would like to go to Tucson and see it in action.
Oh, we can definitely organize a tour. That sounds like a great idea, Councilmember Adams.
Yeah, we can see if some commissioners also want to attend, because I know there's some commissioners with keen interest in that area. So
that'd be great.
Thank you, Brayden.
No worries.
Yes,
Ken,
I think who is that?
I think Kenan, did you have a hand raised?
Yes. Thank you for putting this together, Councilmember Kuby and Adams. The commission has submitted a letter to council on the recommendations that we have to move forward with the green infrastructure, as well as the International Green Construction Code.
Very good. Yes, I mean, I think you have a full resounding yes. I think we can talk, maybe we can, is it too soon, Brayden, to bring this back to council in June at the next work study?
I think you're probably going to want to ask for a presentation from staff on green infrastructure before we get direction council. Okay. But you can separate out International Green Construction Code. You're going to be hearing from Marilyn Shelley later on that. Yeah. And so I believe Mag is here. Are they able to go next in order?
Yes, yes. So if we could though have staff return to us either, I don't know if June is too soon or in August to talk more about how we can proceed to advance our green infrastructure. I know that the commission is working on this, but it would be great to bring something to council in the early fall if possible. But with that, next up is item 4B2 is Bus Rapid Transit BRT. And I believe we have our friends from MAG, from the Maricopa Association of Governments, here to discuss. So if we could advance them as panelists.
I think someone on your end was going to share the slides.
So Alex, do you have the slides from MAG?
I do not have copies of the slide, but Jennifer, I just made you a presenter, so you'll be able to share your screen.
Okay,
Very good. And if you could introduce yourself, Jennifer.
I will do that. Can we see it?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Good afternoon, council members. I'm Jennifer Valentine, and I'm a transportation planner with the Maricopa Association of Governments. I was the project manager for the MAG Regional Bus Rapid Transit feasibility study, and I appreciate the opportunity to present to you today and tell you about some of the recommendations from this study. So just a quick overview to orient you to the study. The major purpose was really to gauge both the interest in and the feasibility of implementing BRT throughout our region. We also sought to coordinate with the City of Phoenix, Valley Metro, and the member agencies within our study area on both our outreach and the technical elements of the study. We were really focused on public and stakeholder education, especially because BRT is a new mode for this region. Another major element was developing regional BRT performance and design standards to make sure that when we're talking about BRT, we're all on the same page and we have the same ideas in mind. And then finally, getting to the fun part where we start drawing some lines on a map and recommend a potential network. So this is an overview of the major tasks of the study. Just to quickly run through, we started out with a review of existing conditions, then developed a vision, goals, and objectives, not just for the study, but for regional BRT as a whole. Next, we developed those performance and design standards and criteria that I mentioned before. Then we moved on to an opportunities and challenges assessment where we looked at transportation technology that might help or influence implementation, and then finally identifying the potential BRT system. So we started the study towards the end of 2019, worked on it through most of last year, and right now we're actually just wrapping up the final report in the executive summary. A couple of milestones to point out. We did start out last spring with an interactive survey. I think we got about 420 responses to that. And then another major milestone was this past October, we had a pretty successful virtual public meeting. So this is a map of our study area. Of course, you can see the city of Tempe there in the middle. It also includes portions of Glendale, Phoenix, Scottsdale, Mesa, Gilbert, and Chandler. So we started out the study with a pretty typical transit propensity analysis. The darker areas of the map show higher concentrations of populations that are more likely to use transit, and that includes the ones listed here, so minority and low-income residents, youth, seniors, zero vehicle households, and people with disabilities. So we wanted to make sure we were incorporating these populations into our analysis. Next, we worked with our technical advisory group, which was made up of representatives from these 7 cities and towns to identify some of the most important regional activity centers and destinations. We wanted to be sure we were serving some of these destinations, and we also thought in many cases they could serve as a logical beginning or end point for a BRT line. So in terms of the vision, goals, and objectives, there's a lot more that I don't have time to go through today, but sort of a high-level look at our areas of focus. We focused on improving mobility, accessibility, and connectivity, creating a more balanced transportation system that provides additional choices in terms of mode, developing regional performance and design standards, to the extent that was possible through this study and through BRT development, encouraging more transit supportive land use and development patterns. And then really a focus on the process itself, being inclusive and ensuring that at the end of the study, we really had regional support for the recommendations. So I wanted to run through some of the key elements of BRT before I move through a series of maps with the recommendations. So I'm going to move around a little bit with these icons, but just starting out with the first one, which is level or near level boarding is an important element of BRT, both for accessibility, but also to expedite the boarding process. This next icon is about the stops and stations, which are really more on the level of light rail stations than a traditional bus stop, with more amenities. This next icon with the bus only lane is a really important one, and also probably one of the more controversial elements. We had a lot of discussions about, with a large diverse region, it's not really possible to require a certain percentage of dedicated lanes, but where we ended up landing in our design standards was a combination of dedicated lanes and then intersection treatments like transit signal priority and queue jump lanes to make sure that BRT is time competitive and reliable. So I'm going to combine a few more of the icons here with the lighting, the bicycle facilities, and the pedestrian facilities, where there's really a nice synergy between implementation of BRT and some of these other types of amenities. And then a couple final points. Frequent all-day service is another hallmark of BRT, looking at 10-minute frequency or less during the peak period, which can last up to 18 hours a day. So not your traditional AM and PM peak, but really a much longer span throughout the day. So in our analysis, in terms of which corridors were even considered, we started out with the recommendations from MAG's Regional Transit Framework Study Update, or RTFSU. That study looked at corridors that were sort of ripe for high capacity transit, which included light rail, bus rapid transit, and enhanced bus. So this BRT study really took that a step further and looked specifically at readiness for BRT as a mode. We also wanted to include recommendations from local and regional plans and studies, so we added those to the list. And then towards the beginning of last year, MAG conducted a call for projects as part of the development of our regional transportation plan, and there were a few submissions about BRT. So this is a map of the recommendations from the RTFSU. The darker or brighter blue lines are the strongest potential corridors along many of our major arterials, and then the lighter blue lines are other potential corridors. So as I mentioned, we started out with these in mind, and this area also helped shape the area for our project. So this is a map of what we call the universe of regional BRT corridors. This was our starting point. We started out with a lot of these corridors on the table. You'll notice the bright green lines are the 6 potential lines that have been under study by the City of Phoenix BRT program. And just to respect the fact that those corridors are all still under study, we wanted to keep those called out separately, but also do our own independent analysis just to see how they were scoring. So you'll see several corridors running through the city of Tempe, either north-south or east-west. So we started out with Rio Salado Dobson, Broadway, Southern, Baseline, Hayden, Scottsdale Rural Road, Mill Kyrene, and Priest, along with quite a few others across the region. So after identifying this whole set, we went to our phase 1 evaluation. It was phase 1 of 3. So we used the 13 evaluation criteria listed here to evaluate all of the corridors in the previous slide. So I'll just highlight a couple of things here. So we placed the most value on existing transit ridership and service equity, which really refers to the transit propensity map I showed earlier. Existing transit ridership is really important on underlying bus service because it just shows that there's already high demand, and BRT could really act as kind of an upgrade to that service. We also looked at the activity centers I mentioned earlier, existing and future population and employment, other types of land use, connections to other high capacity transit like light rail and streetcar. And then finally, we looked at projected transit ridership using the MAG travel demand model. So after our phase 1 evaluation, we only eliminated 2 corridors, which are the ones you see dashed in red. And that was mostly just due to overlapping service areas. So I'm going to give away the punchline pretty early here, but Scottsdale Rural Road is definitely one of the top performers in the region. And so it didn't make a lot of sense to have Hayden McClintock and Mill Kyrene so close when they weren't performing nearly as well. So phase 2, we moved from a corridor level evaluation to a segment level evaluation where we looked at mile by mile segments, just so we weren't skewing anything by the length of the corridor. So this map shows existing local bus ridership, and anywhere that doesn't already have local bus service, like Grand Avenue, for example, is shown in gray, and then these darker areas are where we have higher ridership. So we added on top of that projected ridership. So this was the output from the MAG travel demand model, and we wanted to give those segments that don't already have bus service, an opportunity to show us what ridership could look like in the future. Not surprisingly, if there isn't already bus service along a corridor, in most cases we saw a projection for relatively low ridership. And again, not surprisingly, you see higher ridership in some of the more core areas, and then as you get out a little bit further along Baseline Road, for example, the ridership dwindles a little bit. So based on this segment level evaluation, we removed quite a few corridors from further consideration. I'll highlight the ones in the Tempe area, but just kind of generally, the idea here was to get rid of some of those less productive segments. So I mentioned the example of Baseline Road, and then also, again, some of the overlapping market areas. So there was this trade-off between Broadway, Southern, and Baseline. For example, Southern was eliminated from consideration here because of plans for a future streetcar, and also playing with different alignments that it didn't really make sense to try to cross over the 60 for potential extensions. Also, Rio Salado Dobson was eliminated during this phase due to lower ridership, especially along this segment. And then some of the others you see are, again, some of the more outlying areas like north on 19th Avenue or some of the sections further east in the East Valley. So this is a cleaned up version of the previous map that just shows the phase 2 recommendations. So some of the key corridors running through Tempe are Scottsdale Rural Road, Priest Drive was still in the mix at this point, and then Baseline Road running east-west. So the phase 3 analysis was where we rescored all of these corridors that were still in the mix using the same 13 criteria from phase 1, but we did have the truncated corridor links. And when I say eliminated competing routes, I just mean instead of evaluating 20 or 30 routes that were all competing for ridership, it was a smaller set. So it was a more realistic view of how ridership might look. So in most cases, these corridors scored better under phase 3 because the corridor extents were more appropriate. So here's a map of the phase 3 recommendations, which divides things into high potential and other potential corridors. I will kind of run through all of the high potential corridors In no particular order, we identified 3 of the 6 City of Phoenix corridors under study as performing a little bit better. So those were Camelback 24th Street, Indian School Road 24th Street, Camelback Thomas. And then the north-south was 35th to avoid redundancy with the light rail running along 19th. Then also Glendale Avenue, Cap I-10, and then down in the Southeast Valley, Baseline Road, Scottsdale Rural Road, and Country Club, Arizona, with some other potential kind of extensions or future corridors along Priest, Main Street, Power, and Gilbert Road. And a lot of this, when we've talked about these recommendations, is a domino effect. So if one of the first corridors to be implemented was Scottsdale Rural Road, maybe closely followed by Baseline Road, some of these connections start to make more sense than others. And I'll show that here in the next map. This is what kind of a long-term build out could look like, where we start to make connections sort of further west on Baseline to connect over and then up using 19th or 35th. You see Baseline extended further east and making connections south into Gilbert. You see that important connection between Scottsdale and Phoenix using 44th Street. So just kind of making some of those connections in the future to build out the network a little bit more. So just a few final considerations. So we did want to make sure that this was a useful product for all of our member agencies. And so implementation is a really important part of that. So we wanted to look at planned roadway or active transportation investments that could provide good synergy, existing transportation, traffic signal priority and preemption. So some of that technology that's already available at certain intersections. What are the existing lane configurations? Of course, that's really important when you're talking about having a dedicated lane in the future. What are the right-of-way constraints? Are there access management issues to be considered? And then finally, what are the development and redevelopment opportunities? So in terms of collaboration and outreach, we did have a technical advisory group that met and reviewed work products throughout the study. Towards the beginning, we conducted a series of stakeholder and peer agency interviews to see what we could learn about BRT in other parts of the country. And then our project webpage is really the repository for all of the information. We have a 3-minute educational video we produced that's been pretty popular. As I mentioned, we did the online survey and had an interactive comment map, and then the virtual public meeting back in October. We'll close with, this is a screenshot of our virtual open house. You see me there in the center. I did a little welcome video, and then we had a series of maps and boards where people could pan around the room and interact. You could see other people using the room and furniture, so it was kind of a fun experience. And then at the end, we had an opportunity for people to submit feedback. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. That was a very fulsome presentation, and we love all that detail. We so appreciate you coming here today. I just wanted to ask how might, well, I know it hasn't been passed yet, but the American Jobs Plan and the possible federal dollars coming in for infrastructure, how might that impact BRTs? And also the big question of the year is Prop 400. It expires in early January 2025. And I understand we're going to have our first bite at the apple and have a prop before the county in November 22. So how might the continuation of Prop 400 impact BRT implementation in our valley?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked. So one of the reasons for the timing of this study was that it's designed to feed into the development of our regional transportation plan. And so I don't know how many of you follow the MAG's RTP process, but we've just now presented 4 different scenarios or lists of projects and programs to some of our committees, and I think it's about to go through regional council. Just a first look, some scenarios and ideas, but we used the recommendations from the BRT study to help build those scenarios. There is at least, I think there's at least 3 BRT lines in each of the scenarios and up to 6 in others. So the scenarios looked at a continuation of the half-cent sales tax or potentially going up to 1 cent. Obviously, that's a decision to be made by our policymakers, but we wanted to give them some information to help inform their decision. So I think that kind of covers the regional funding portion. So we had to make assumptions about, how much of these projects would be regionally funded versus federal competitive grants versus a local contribution. So we did have to think about those pieces. Certainly, if there was more federal money available, that opens things up quite a bit. It puts less of a burden on the region and opens up funding to, for other sources. At this point, I think one of the challenges for us is that if we were to try to implement several BRT lines at the same time, those lines would be competing against each other for scarce federal funding. So we need to think about the timing of those routes and implementation.
Thank you. Councilmember Adams, do you have any questions before I ask staff the same?
I do. So what would be our time frame again on this? Like for instance, the Scottsdale Rural Road rapid bus.
Sure. In terms of implementation, so the time frame of the regional transportation plan is kind of the new would be after the potential extension of the sales tax. So really our baseline is more like a 2025. So when you're talking about how long it would take to get something implemented, that's kind of the starting point. Certainly BRT is less capital intensive than building something like a light rail, but you're still looking at kind of a few-year process, certainly from the study anyway, and from a lot of what we've heard through outreach and working with our member agencies. Scottsdale Rural Road would be a great kind of pilot or first line for the region.
Okay, thanks. Because I get a lot of questions from South Tempe about the population is aging down here, and they just want to be able to take the buses, and then Orbit has been cut back, and so it's been really difficult to to explain kind of what's happening with them. And so I appreciate the time frame that you provided. So I wish it was sooner though. I love riding the bus, by the way. It's a lot of fun and relaxing.
Councilmember Adams, aging population. Who are you talking about there? You're not talking about me. So we have a number of staff here. Do we have any questions or concerns that staff would like to raise about Tempe and BRT in Tempe? I'm personally delighted to see the Scottsdale Rural Road route as well as baseline being so heavily considered and weighed in all of the analysis. But do we have any staff comments? And as we're waiting for people to pop up, I just wanted to mention, that Tempe and our council and our mayor will be there with the ballot arguments and doing all we can to support the continuation of Prop 400. It's so essential to the Valley. And my hope is, 20 years ago was the last time we had such a tax before the voters. And I think people's understanding of transportation has changed a lot. And certainly there's been a lot of technological change. And I'm hoping that we'll also be able to see connections. I know in Tempe, only about a third of our bus stops have shade, whether natural or man-made shade. And so I'm hoping that the new Prop 400, the extension, would take into consideration shade and building shades, because we need to encourage people to ride the bus. We're going to have it be a comfortable, accessible place to wait for the bus. Do we have any questions then from staff before we move on? Alex?
Council members Cubie and Adams, no, not from staff. Thank you so much to Jennifer for presenting from MAG. And I just want to give a shout out to Robert Yabez. Any questions you have about these programs, he can answer any of them. So thank you.
Robert is a font of knowledge on all things transportation. Thanks so much, staff. And thank you, Jennifer, again for presenting to us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Take care. So I'll now move back up to section 4A on the agenda, and that is 4A1 livability outreach. And Shauna's here to give us an update. Shauna Warner, Neighborhood Services. Shauna?
Yes, thank you, Council Members Kuby and Adams. We had spoken at the very first meeting about going out into the community and starting to talk about what livable community means to them. And so currently, as you both referenced, we are also looking forward to getting out in person, but currently focused on more digital outreach. So the forum topic was posted. With the digital outreach, we can get that out to all of our forum subscribers. Has been sent a couple different times to our neighborhood and homeowner associations. And then Shannon Reed is here, who's our public information officer, and she can speak specifically to some of the other tools that they've been using as well. But then also should mention that Councilmember Kuby was able to speak to it at our State of the Neighborhoods and had the video that goes with the community that also talks to it. Shannon, did you want to add anything on there before we talk a little bit about what we've heard? She unmuted, but we can't hear her. Shannon, are you there?
I am here. I was talking. Let me try again.
There you go. We hear you now. Perfect.
Okay. So we use all of our social media channels to disseminate information about the city. But for the survey question, we use Nextdoor, Facebook, Twitter. And then we also used our COVID-19 e-news update that currently goes out bi-weekly. And it was in that e-newsletter a couple of times as well, along with some other sustainability topics. So we do like to use all of the tools in our toolkit to disseminate information, but we did spread the word using those outlets.
And what was nice about the timing is it did coincide heavily with April last month, so was able to tie into a lot of the different information Shannon was getting out with those as well. And the next slide, Alex. So we will get you all of the responses we have so far, because we really do have a lot of thoughtful responses, and people have been taking time, and we have some just very detailed information on what a livable community means to them. However, did just want to provide a summary so far of some of the common themes that have been coming out. Those include heavy arts and culture in a community makes it livable, bicycle, ped, and transit improvements, communication around fact-based and civil discourse, education, enhanced public spaces, inclusion, equity, respect, and consideration for all, shade, and support for small and local businesses. And then also just in talking about what makes a livable community, some of the common concerns that came out of the statements we've seen so far talks about some of the development and density related concerns, housing, some of the middle of housing, multifamily ownership. You can see some of the detailed info there, limited resources around energy resilience efficiency, some need for more affordable solar, organization. We talked about water today already, and clean air, and then also feeling safe in the community. And so then just next steps, we do still have it open on the forum, and we are going to continue our digital pushes with our recreation centers opening now. We will also have that opportunity for some small tabling, and then starting in August, some of that heavier in-person outreach where we can go out into the communities to have that conversation with them as well, which will help us in hearing from people. But so far we have still continued to have those come in on the forum for those who can access the website. And so happy if you had any questions. Otherwise, we will continue to keep the committee updated on what we're hearing. And as I had said, you'll get all of those statements we've received so far, so you can go through those and see in detail if there's anything that might stand out to you as well to add.
Thank you so much, Shauna. I appreciate that. Appreciate so much your presentation. So I wonder whether, so in terms of more outreach, if we agree that we need more outreach, whether we could do some polling that we could do on social media, like just talking about the different things that come up and asking. I mean, I know it's not a scientifically valid poll, but just to get more engagement with our residents to show sort of the top livability items and just see what they're how they're ranked. Is that something we could do? We could just do that in the city social media, and then Councilmember Adams and I could share that or do our own. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, absolutely. Now that we kind of have some categories that the statements have some natural groupings around, it's a lot easier to do that versus that big broad question, which is kind of harder to do some of those polls around. So yeah, we could take those if you guys are good with what we've summarized there and focus some more outreach on that as well.
Yeah, I like the idea of doing a little bit more intensive, zeroing in. And I know that Dr. Withicombe Keeler from ASU did a lot of really good outreach with games and activities and such. But I mean, is it your sense that we have a good mix, good representation from the neighborhoods, that we're getting good data, or do you feel like we need to double down? Like, what's your sense as a staff person who has long been engaged in bringing the community into these decisions?
I think based on the varied responses we've gotten, we're definitely hearing from different communities. So I wouldn't say like they've all just been on one topic. So we really have had some just great responses and very detailed and specific to their experiences. I always think we will have community members that have a hard time with some of our digital outreach. So I think just being able to get out in the community and have some more of those informal conversations can help. And I think also some of those, like we had said, once we have something that they can also see and react to, can help encourage additional outreach. So I think if we have a little bit more time to do some of that, then I think it's will be helpful as well.
Councilmember, you're muted.
Oh my gosh, how many times have I done that in life, in COVID life? Yeah, sorry. Thank you so much, Shauna. I'm wondering though, if Nikki's there, could we also consider doing some kind of a video where we could reach out to residents and just ask people sort of word on the street, like what does livability mean to you, and engage people in a kind of informal, fun way? And that's obviously not a scientific way, but it just raises the issue in people's minds and puts it uppermost in people's minds. Is that a possibility? We could run that on social media, or even put it in the kiosks and get that video sort of scattered around.
I really like that idea, Councilmember Cubie.
Hi, council members. It's Nikki. I didn't know if I was unmuted or not, and now I am. So yes, I like that idea a lot as a way of generating even more comment. So sure, we can take a look at that.
Well, thanks. And Councilmember Adams, do you have any other ideas, or anybody else on the line? I know we have our commissioner from our neighborhood advisory commission here, and if she's still here, let me see.
I do have
Yeah, Hannah Bellick. If
idea
Hannah
for it.
Bellick wants to speak up. Sorry, go on, Councilmember Adams.
Yes, I thought maybe it would be nice for us to go out into the parks and talk to see if the residents want to give us ideas, and we'll be in the parks and we could see what's going on around us and the greenery, and maybe that would be kind of a good way to stimulate people's minds, and it also gives us the time to be outside and be safe, yet reach out to our residents. So maybe we could do a south, Tempe Park, mid Tempe Park, and a north Tempe Park, and see if the residents want to come out and talk to us about it.
It's a good idea. Very good. So Hannah Bellick is our commissioner for the Neighborhood Advisory Commission. Do you want to step up? Anything you want to add to this, or any concerns or ideas you have?
Hi there. Thank you. Just that the commission is attempting to create some communication infrastructure and pathways to get this kind of feedback on this on any topic that y'all might be seeking feedback on. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah.
This is Jennifer. Could I just
yes, please
talk to the commissioner? Hannah, is there anything that we can do to help you with the communication to the neighborhoods that I'm just like kind of brainstorming with you right now, but if there's ideas that Councilmember QB and I can help as far as facilitating the communication?
There's a few things that are in process right now, including trying to basically list build, and that's something that Nikki and Shauna are both helping with, to reach out both to neighborhood association chairs and HOA presidents, as well as just the general community, trying to get people to opt in to receive neighborhood focused communications. I'm sorry, I was expecting to just be an observer at this meeting, so I didn't really prepare, but there
No
are
worries
things
at
in
all.
process, and we appreciate your support, and we just, as a commission, are really interested in enhancing the pathways for neighborhoods to get input to the mayor and council.
Well, you're an amazing leader with the commission, and we're lucky to have you. And I would like to suggest that Councilmember QB and I sit down with you and just kind of do a brainstorming session. Councilmember QB, would you be okay with that?
Sure.
Okay. Yes, Alex, if you're on the call, if you can make that happen, that would be great. Thank you. And thank you, Hannah.
So Shauna, are we being too vague? Do you have enough information to go on that? If we just do maybe a kind of a poll, a social media poll, and perhaps work with Channel 11 and Nikki's team to do some kind of video, is that enough to sort of wrap things up and then report back in the next meeting in June, and then with the idea that maybe in August we could report back to council? Is that reasonable?
I will check with Nikki and Shannon on the video. I can't commit. I'm not quite
Sure,
sure.
sure.
And they
No,
might be able to say
yeah.
some timeline of that as well, but definitely doable. Yes, enough direction, and we'll start moving on those items. As far as how long a video might take, I'm not quite sure. So.
Sure. I see the videos being something fun and engaging, not really scripted as much, although, I mean, we probably get some unscripted moments you have to edit out, but it would just be interesting just to hear a man on the street, woman on the street kind of reaction. All righty. I know time is getting away from us. We really want to move along with our agenda. So thank you so much, Shauna, for your presentation. And the next item I would like to bring up, I know we're switching around the order of things, but I wanted to go to item 4A3, the International Green Construction Code update. And I believe Marilyn is still here. DeRosa and her team can come and talk to us and give us an update.
Yes, thank you. Let me get my screen. Alex, do I have the ability to share my screen?
There, it's up.
Yes, one moment. Let me give you access. One moment.
You are now a presenter. Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much for having us. I have here with, I'm imagining that you can see this PowerPoint. I have with us today is Braden Kay, is Shelley Seiler, who's currently representing the community development team, and a couple of other folks, Julian, our city engineer, and I think Isaac is here as well, representing the transportation team. And the reason there are so many folks here is that this is really a collaborative effort. The International Green Construction Code, as you know, the third edition was published in 2018, and it's an effort that's pretty comprehensive. That's meant to deal with more than just pipes and electrical fixtures. The code is designed to decrease energy uses in many different venues, and to reduce carbon footprint. Now, these are, of course, fundamental elements of our city's climate action plan, which makes it such an important element. The code addresses site development and land use, and one of the goals is preservation of natural and material resources. None of this is new to you, Council Members Kuby or Adams. It supports the use of energy efficient appliances, renewable energy systems, water resource conservation, rainwater collection. One of the things it does that's different is it emphasizes energy efficient practices, building system performances, verification of those performance, and building owner education. Another thing that's important is jurisdictional electives, and jurisdictional electives allows us to customize the code to address our local priorities and our conditions. So there are possible areas of implementation for the code, which requires some departmental collaboration. I mentioned community development, engineering, transportation, sustainability. There's
Marilyn, can I jump in for a second? It sounds like you're kind of like muffled. Is there anything you can do with your mic?
Gosh, I'm so sorry. All right, is that better?
I think so.
I can hold the mic right here. Is that better?
That's a lot better.
Okay, I apologize. Thank you for letting me know. So this is a collaborative effort: community development, engineering, transportation, sustainability, a variety of departments. And what it requires, really, what's going to be helpful is to have council, to have some elective and city management leadership, which is why we're here today. There's internal. There's two places that we can implement this: internal or external. With respect to internal, that would be our capital improvement program. And we're working on a pilot project currently, the Fire Medical Rescue Station number 2. We hired an architect and construction team that are experienced in an IGCC. And what we're hoping is that this will allow our team to evaluate the best practices for implementation in our community, which goes back to the jurisdictional electives. With respect to external, council could consider an ordinance or some kind of a bonus program, for lack of a better word, with developers to incentivize the use of the IGCC. So the next step for implementation internally, I mentioned we have a pilot project, and we plan to design and construct using the IGCC as a guide for Fire Station 2. Where we'll be a bit challenged for now is that the building plan review and inspection requires some education, some training, and some certification. And as you know, we're currently not tooled for those things. Our recommendation is that the council, that through this committee, support a sustainable building policy that we can modify as we move forward and as we learn more through this pilot project. We can also have an opt-out option in the policy. This is something that this committee could potentially consider asking for more feedback from staff regarding. And then for the Fire Medical Rescue Station number 2, we'll need to contract or have temporary services for the plan review and inspection until we get our teams tooled. So for external implementation, we think it's important to research and interview other IGCC communities. This pilot project will inform that external process as we identify those elements that work best for our community, and then build internal capacity throughout the organization. It is throughout the organization, but there's a large element of this effort that would need to be, we would need to tool and resource community development with respect to staffing and certifications and such. So that's the end of my presentation. I think that we have Braden, as I mentioned. Braden is here. He's enthusiastic. This is really important for the climate action plan. And we have Shelley available. And we can respond to any questions or direction that the subcommittee would like to provide.
Thank you, Marilyn. Really appreciate it. I know the Sustainability Commission has been hard at work on this topic, and I've listened into some of those meetings and was particularly taken with a presentation from Anthony Floyd, who leads green building efforts in Scottsdale, and it really put Scottsdale on the map with green building. And I know that they're now working on a sort of mandatory plan. If there's an entitlement that a developer is getting, or increased height or density bonus, that they would be required to operate under the IGCC. And obviously it has to be adapted and customizable to the particular city and to the region. And that takes a lot of work. I don't want to underestimate that. But I was really intrigued with Scottsdale and wanting to learn from their experience, which was, you know, it's always voluntary, like anyone can pick it up now, right? But really to have to make this transformation, we need to really institute a plan to require developers who are asking something of us. Like if they're asking for increased height, if they're asking for increased density entitlements, then that's part of what they need to do to receive those bonuses and frankly that increased profit. So I was hoping perhaps that our Sustainability Commissioner Kenan Young could speak to this topic, because I know he's been thoroughly invested in it over the past few months.
Absolutely, and thank you, Council Member, for the opportunity to speak. I understand that we also received the presentation from City of Scottsdale and have come to understand that they have gotten to their status as an exemplar in the International Green Construction Code without any mandatory requirements. So that's interesting to me, because I know we have historically shied away from mandatory incentives, yet they've been able to get around the aversiveness of mandatory codes and still achieved an exemplar status. So I would be really curious how we can move beyond this review and analysis of the International Green Construction Code and the potential green infrastructure codes and standards, and actually adopt this thing so that we can start doing these types of pilots. The second is kind of to Lauren's point, or Councilmember Kubi's point on exploring different ways to make elements of the codes mandatory. I'm curious, within the existing structures that we already have, what incentives are in play that we can implement elements of the code. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the code is required, but there are parts of the code that are required by virtue of the elements that are out there. And again, Anthony Floyd did an absolute marvelous presentation on how they slipped in these codes that made it more of an incentive to just do the code, because so many of pieces of the code were included in other spaces. The last question that I would have is, if we are a sustainable city and we are trying to walk the talk, what is the earliest that we can expect all new city buildings and retrofits of city buildings to adhere to the adoption of these codes? So those are kind of my three questions within this that were also articulated in a memo to council sent on May 17th.
So Marilyn, I know it's a lot, but do you want to start with just talking about the internal workings? And you know, we haven't built a new building since the fire station, and we don't have one immediately being built, but what can we do? Because obviously we have to walk the talk, and we know it does take quite a bit of effort to get the code customizable. So let's talk about that internal aspect. How long would it take for us to get up to speed and be able to model the best practices?
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Kubi and Councilmember Adams and Councilmember Adams. Let me move my microphone again. So really all it would take for engineering and transportation we are using the IGCC for the Fire Station 2, and it was really staff motivated, absent a policy, right? So if council's pleasure was for all of our projects, certainly the new ones, to ensure that we used architects and contractors that were familiar with IGCC, we could do that. We could do that as soon as we were provided with that direction. With respect to managing, so there's design, construction, and then of course there's the plan review and the building inspection part of it. And the plan review and the building inspection part of it, we have a temporary solution. It would be for us to contract that work out, to hire a temp. I know Shelley has received some funding this fiscal or next fiscal year that she thought would be available for that. But ultimately, we'd want to tool our own staff. Now, that's that answer to that question. Braden, could you potentially help me with the others? Braden Kay is here. He's our sustainability officer.
Yeah, thanks, Marilyn. So yeah, Kenan, it's a good question. I think a lot of it really, and I don't want to speak out of turn for Shelley and community development, but a lot of it is dependent on how many resources community development has over the next several years in order to do these types of changes. And it also depends on the ability to have, to be in conversation with the development community to the degree that we have acceptance of moving in this direction. So, Scottsdale's getting to a point where they're actually considering going to citywide mandatory use of the code for all multifamily buildings, but they've been doing this for 10 years, So I think doing pilot projects both on the city side and having a city policy like you've just discussed with Marilyn, and then also figuring out how we get the resources for piloting private developers using the code, having a voluntary program, and then moving that voluntary program to mandatory. So a lot of it has to do with levels of investment. I think, you could get to a place where it's a widespread practice and used, in the next 5 to 10 years, and it closer to 5 if more investment is made, because a lot of this really does have to do with making sure that community development has all the training of our code inspectors, all the training of our planners. It's really a full shift in what code we use and how we use it. So with an understanding that needs to take time, but the money that's potentially there that will allow community development to have hire a contractor or a very entry level position to start this process is certainly a start. And then future councils would have to continue that investment in community development for this to become more widespread throughout the city.
So Braden, you make a really good point, because there are a number of private entities. I'm thinking of Architectron, led by John Kane, the architect who also was the initial commissioner for Sustainability Commission. And they already have developed a sustainable building policy. I mean, they're already doing it with the projects that they work on. And so it would be good to work, do a pilot project with, a couple of developers, whoever they want to be. I mean, we'd love other people to step up as well, but it's more likely to be people that are already familiar with International Green Construction Code and have built valley projects. So I'm really intrigued by that. But I want to know from you, Braden, when should we be going back to council to get consensus on, allowing staff to work up some of these plans? Because it has been discussed for a long time. I know it was one of my chief objectives when I got elected in 2014, and I followed Scottsdale with envy over the years. And I know how much work has gone into this from your staff, from Maryland's staff, from community development. So what is the next step forward in terms of us returning to a work study session? Could we possibly go back in June's work study to gain consensus about the next steps that staff will take?
Yeah, I think you could decide that you want to request Maryland and engineering transportation in partnership with sustainability and community development to draft a city building sustainable building policy that like Marilyn suggested, and then you would want to give staff several months before we then came to council with a policy that could be adopted. So, but yeah,
should gain consensus in June.
You need to get permission
Yeah.
from council to ask staff to move forward with that. Yeah.
So what do you think, Councilmember Adams? Would you be good with that then? Trying to go back to council, the work study session in June to gain consensus from council?
Yes, I would be good with that. Absolutely. I'm completely supportive of it.
Yeah, and I'm also interested, I know that International Green Construction Code doesn't do everything for everybody, but I want to make sure that we're looking at EV, electric vehicle adoption, and solar ready code. So can we wrap EV and solar ready code into our sustainable building code? Or Braden?
My understanding is that when Anthony Floyd came, that you can put EV ready and solar ready into your version of the International Green Construction Code, that those are sort of appendices to the code. So that's something that we can certainly, that staff will continue to look into, and we can, I don't know what Maryland staff will say exactly about how the inner workings of that, but that can certainly be a part of the exploration. What do you think, Marilyn?
Yeah, well, and I was going to say a sustainable buildings policy, if council provides us with that direction, we can make it broad. And we can make it, we could also have a policy that could potentially, could it be modified administratively? That's sometimes good and sometimes not so good. So that we could, as the industry evolves, that we would have some flexibility. But Brady and I could work on what that language might look like. And then ultimately, of course, council members Kuby and Adams, you and your colleagues would decide, right? What you think is in the best interest of the community and how much flexibility it might have.
Very good. So I guess, do you have the direction then that you need from this committee to come forward? So June work study session, is that towards the end of June, I believe? So there's not a tremendous amount of time. So it'd be possible to get a memo constructed so we could go back to council and seek authority. We know there's general authority provided in our Climate Action Plan 1.0, but now we're getting into the nitty gritty. We're actually going to see some movement on this, and so I very much would love to see that introduced in the nearest possible work study. June's possible, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah, we can move. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just saying I'm looking to Braden. June 17th is the work study session. And I think that's achievable.
Yeah, I think that's achievable. We'll attempt to do that, and we'll work with staff to do that, and if it's not, then we'll do the next available meeting.
Sure. I mean, whatever time you need it's more important to get it right than get it rushed. So that's fine. I'm happy about that. I also want to point out that in the American Jobs Plan, we're talking about that a number of times tonight. I know it's just proposed, but there are a lot of incentives built for multifamily housing to install electric vehicle infrastructure and for cities as well. So I mean, we're at a time now where getting these projects ready and to be shovel ready and to incentivize private developers for EV and solar. It might be just coinciding with increased infrastructure investment nationally. So this is an exciting time.
And can I
Councilmember? Oh, sorry, Marilyn.
I was just going to ask, can I clarify that what we would go is we wouldn't have a sustainable building policy, a draft ready by the 17th. We would be just presenting to council the idea, exactly. And then you and your fellow colleagues would have the conversation.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And I would love to give that memo. Sorry, Councilmember Adams.
Yes, if we could have cost estimates, because I know we'll be asked about it. So what the difference in costs would be, and then also like how it will save in the long run. I think that's important that we have that data put together for our future meeting with council.
Yeah, there are some studies that basically what we've been doing is we've been adding some additional money in order to make sure that we're building that in. What Marilyn and I have been finding with this is that the most important thing, the International Green Construction Code can be cost neutral if you start from the very beginning with the types of architects and designers that are able to do it. So you know, we can show some general data and research that shows that, but we won't be able to show very detailed return on investments or cost savings data in June.
Yeah, no,
I think that's important, or we're going to get a lot of pushback. So, Brayden, how long would it take you to do something like that, or put together something like that?
We are doing some work with our sustainable facilities plan with HDR that might be able to get into some of that work, but it'll be 6 to 12 months.
And if I could say, council members, I think that in construction, it can be cost neutral in construction. Where the cost savings come is in ownership of the building.
Correct.
And operation, yeah.
And so we do have HDR looking into how to help us support those types of investments and what cost savings can look like in that work. My suggestion would be the way that Marilyn laid this out, I think gives us a lot of flexibility. So if you say the city policy is we're building all International Green Construction Code buildings as a city, unless the city manager decides to opt out for a particular project, and we will relook at this policy after we get additional data back by the upcoming, you know, HDR study. So I think that there's a way to do this that gives a lot of flexibility while still making sure we're on the appropriate policy path.
Okay, because I'm completely supportive of it. I just want to make sure that we really convey our message clearly about, you know, this long term. This is a great thing. I know it is. So I just want to make sure that we're messaging this appropriately and accurately, and so people understand it and are supportive of it. So I want to make sure we're in the winner's circle on this. Thank you.
Remember, you raise a good point, but it's often, you know, it can be so context specific, and to give exact costs, it can be really difficult. And you have a lot of external impacts, externalized costs, and externalized benefits that can't necessarily be quantified. Sometimes with sustainability, you have to show return on investment, whereas in other community building or values-laden decisions that council makes, you're not expected to show that. But no, I understand. I mean, we know that the costs, you know, construction costs have gone way up. We know that the cost of solar has gone way down, you know, so, but for individual projects, you know, we're not going to be able to necessarily give exact numbers because it's so dependent on an individual project idea. But we do have the experience of someone like Architectron, who's worked and done sustainable building for quite some time, that can help to weigh in on some of that return on investment, you know, general issue. So perhaps we could look to our stakeholders there and ask for their advice and how best to stakeholders.
I don't want to be misunderstood. I'm not asking for exact numbers. That's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
I think, but to be able to paint the general picture, because a lot of people don't understand that, you know, maybe something costs more in the beginning, but long term, it's going to pay for itself and improve our environment and protect our environment. And I mean, those are huge issues. I just want us to paint the bigger picture so people understand.
And it's also important to know, like when you have entitlements or increased height or density bonuses that developers get, they get a certain profit from that. And so if we're asking them to build it more sustainably, it might cost them more, but they're also getting greater profit because of it. So it's kind of an incentive. So if we build it as an incentive program, I think that's where we'll have, you know, we'll have success.
I agree. Yep. I'm all
right,
on board.
Great. So thank you so much, Marilyn. Thank you for your presentation. And next item on the agenda, and I know we've taken up a lot of time here, folks. So 4A2 Climate Action Plan 2021 update with Dr. Braden Kay.
Braden, you're on mute.
So we're working on our climate action plan update. We did our first one in 2019. Next slide. And we're working on equitable climate actions, and we're doing both, working on decarbonization of our energy and transportation systems, as well as continuing to make sure the city is building resilience to extreme heat. Next slide. So our first climate action plan had 3 focus areas: energy, transportation, resilience to extreme heat, and 4 highlight actions. And those are ones that we're working on. So resilient energy hubs, you'll hear more about soon with the Envision Tempe project. You'll hear more from Robert Yabes in upcoming meeting about transportation demand management and mobility hubs. And then today you've heard about both green infrastructure and the International Green Construction Code. So we are working now on our climate action work. Next slide. So as you remember, we did a whole listening phase last summer and fall with a variety of different stakeholders from built environment professionals, business leaders, to faith-based organizations, neighborhoods, equity and social justice leaders, and youth and students. Next. We're now in the planning phase, and so we have some upcoming forums. We have a youth forum at 4 p.m. on June 22nd. We have a neighborhood forum at 6 p.m. on June 22nd. Unlimited Potential is a local nonprofit that is helping us do 3 climate justice forums to help with our climate justice agenda. And then the Tempe Chamber and Local First Arizona are collaborating on 2 business forums. So this update is going to have basically actions that come from youth, that come from residents and neighborhoods, that come from our climate justice community, and that come from business. And we will be doing these forums to elicit those actions and the things that they want to be working on and that they want to work on with the city. Next slide. So that'll take us to the fall, where we'll be working on adopting policy. So you'll be working on adopting policy like the International Green Construction Code, potentially looking at green infrastructure policy. So there's a lot of opportunity there. We're going to continue to be investing in infrastructure and programs. Some of the there you see some of the policy development in terms of transportation demand management, mobility hubs. Our first resilient energy hub with Envision Tempe, which you'll be hearing about more next month, as well as doing new green infrastructure projects and neighborhood grants around resilience and sustainability. So really exciting implementation that'll be happening even before we officially adopt the update later this fall. So next slide. So yep, that's it for that. Just excited to continue this work. I want to make sure that you and all of our stakeholders are aware of the forums that we'll be doing in June and July and August, and then we'll be coming back to this committee to give you an update about what we've heard either at probably at the September meeting. So thank you so much. Let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Brady. Fantastic. Councilmember Adams, do you have any comments?
Super excited about this plan. It looks really good, Braden. Excellent work. Thank you. And let's keep making this place even more sustainable, because we've got a fine city.
I'm very much looking forward to adoption of the climate action plan. And I've been in a number of panel discussions and led a number of events at ASU. And whenever people talk about climate action in the state, they're talking about Flagstaff and they're talking about Tempe and Tucson. So thanks so much for leading the way, and thanks for keeping us informed. And now let's see, we have under new items of consideration for B3, it's race to zero.
Yeah, Councilmember, yeah, we have that new item, race to zero. I just want to make sure you know that it's not a new item for consideration.
Oh, okay. So it is 4B3. So Dr. Braden Kay, I think you also have folks from ASU presenting as well?
No, just me. Just me.
Okay, just you. Okay, we're okay.
Just boring old me.
We like you.
So Race to Zero is a new initiative coming out of C40, and it's really just to lay the framework. We originally joined the Global Covenant of Mayors for Energy and Climate. That was a commitment that got us into doing a climate action plan, having a carbon neutrality goal, and then now doing regular support reporting to the Carbon Disclosure Project. This is a new group of cities that are sort of taking that work a step further. So they're working on creating an inclusive society. They're working on creating green and healthy streets. They're working on reducing pollution and ensuring clean air. They're working on developing zero carbon buildings. They're working on resilient and sustainable energy systems, and then advancing towards zero waste, as well as sustainable food systems and divestment from fossil fuels. So this is another sort of cohort of cities that are doing this commitment. In order to join this commitment, you have to have a goal. They want you to have a goal of being carbon neutral sometime in the 2040s and by 2050 at the latest. Currently, our carbon neutrality goal is 2060. So we're not eligible to join this unless we were to make a new commitment to have a 2050 goal instead of a 2060 goal. Currently, City of Phoenix is the only city in Arizona that's doing Race to Zero, but we are hearing from Flagstaff and Tucson that they're planning on joining. My hope is that we could potentially take this to council in August, so that by the time the fall and the different climate commitments and climate summit that's happening in the later fall, that we would be able to be one of these cities that has joined this group. So I firmly believe that being in this cohort is going to help us with additional grants and access to other partnerships that aren't currently available to us. And it's kind of the next step in being, considered both nationally and internationally in that group of leading cities. So really grateful. Phoenix has agreed to do a elected officials a training session on Race to Zero this summer. So I'd love to be able to invite you, the two of you, as well as any other Tempe elected officials, including the mayor, to learn more from Mayor Kate Gallego about why she joined Race to Zero, and the opportunity there is for more Arizona cities to join this commitment. With that, I will take any questions you have.
Well, thank you, Braden. And yes, this goes hand in hand with Arizona Thrives, doesn't it? It just seems logical that we bring both up to the council, and if it's possible in June, and get their sign on. I for one, I know the Arizona Corporation Commission today adopted new energy rules, and they call for they call for clean energy, 100% clean energy by 2050. I'm sorry, by 2032. Sorry, I got that mixed up. There was a lot of confusion today in that meeting. And it just seems like utilities are increasingly on board with a lot of these goals, and I think we should be aligned with other cities. And keep in mind that the American Jobs Act, or a number of the infrastructure plans that are being developed federally, are, if there's unique monies that are going to be available to cities, I think it's going to be a requirement that we be part of that cohort. If we want to be considered for funding for different, hopefully shovel-ready projects that we're developing. So I know, I don't know how Councilmember Adams feels about it, but I'd like to see Arizona Thrives and the Race to Zero brought back in June for.
Yes, Councilmember, I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead, Councilmember.
Oh, no, go ahead. You got it.
I'm completely supportive of it. I love Race to Zero. I think it's a great platform, and I'm 100% supportive of it. So with that, we have almost zero time left, and I have a couple new items I really want to bring up tonight, but
okay.
no pun intended. But whenever so you're ready.
I'll move really fast. I believe you have direction there, Braden.
Yep, I'm good. Thank you so much.
Any new items for consideration to be added to the future agenda, Councilmember Adams?
Yes, so I have two items, kind of making our city more livable. One is, I don't know if, I'm sure that some of you, if you think about it, like when you're in Chandler, how they have in the medians, like the next major street coming up, there's a sign that says So it gives people early warning. And this was brought up by, I think it really affects the older population, particularly because they don't always know how to use the directions and all that stuff. And I would like to see us, and we don't have a lot of medians in the city, and I'm not proposing building new medians, but the medians that we do have for major streets, I would like to have street signs in advance. So it like gives you that warning, maybe 1,000 feet in advance or whatever that, you know, Warner Road or McAllips is coming up. So there are a number of medians, and I would like us to look at adding those street signs. It would be very inexpensive and helpful for everyone in the community. So that's one of my new items. Also, the next one is mosquitoes are really increasing in the valley and not making our backyard so livable. They are actually exploding, becoming a dangerous issue in our city. I spoke with one of the leading experts in the world for mosquitoes, and his name is Dr. Harrison. He's from ASU, and I would like to add him to our agenda for next month to talk about mosquitoes and what we can do as a city without using harmful methods to control our mosquito population. So I would like to add that to next month's agenda. And that's all I have for additions. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. And so we could work out, ensure that we have a good flow. We don't have too many items added, but if we could get that for June, that'd be wonderful. The street signage, I would defer to staff and to Marilyn to see when that can be brought up to our committee. But I
Yes.
approve. And then I just wanted a new item for consideration, and I would like us to look at clover lawns. I've heard that ASU has decided to transition their lawns from turf to clover, and they're beginning that with ASU Poly. And clover lawns use substantially less water, and they're much less maintenance. The clover doesn't grow tall like the grass. And so there is a presentation that ASU has produced, and so we'll have to look and see what our schedule's like, Councilmember Adams, but I would love to get a presentation on clover lawns and how we could maybe adapt and transition in a number of cases, maybe not sports fields, but a number of cases at city property to clover, and to even encourage our residents to do so by providing the clover seeds in the winter.
Sure.
Okay.
I'm very supportive of that, Councilmember QB. But I really insist on the mosquito presentation next month, because it's becoming dangerous. Yeah. It's a health and safety issue, but it's also a livability issue. So I would really like to take that issue up next month.
Oh, I hear you. I hear you loud and clear. And also
we
want to for monsoon season when things get a little more, we're not even at the height of mosquito season. So no, if we can get the ASU professor signed up, that would be wonderful. Would you mind doing the initial contact with our staff and with the professor to get that to happen?
Absolutely. It'd be my pleasure. Thank you.
Great. All right. And then with the clover lawns, we'll just do that when the time allows, because this is an idea for winter, especially because winter lawns are especially suitable for clover adoption. So now,
and I'd be fine with if we have the clover presentation next month. I'm fine with that. So whatever our time permits, but just so you know, because I'm excited about the clover also.
Okay. Great, thanks so much. And the next item on the agenda is 4C announcements. Any announcements, Councilmember Adams?
I don't have any tonight.
Neither do I. Amazing. So I just want to let everybody know our next meeting is June 23rd, Wednesday, at our new permanent time slot. We're starting at 4 p.m. We want to be more respectful of staff and our residents and not go into the evening. So thank you all for being here, and we are adjourned. Here's my virtual gavel.
Nice. Good job, Councilmember QB, as usual.
Thank you, and thank you to staff. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks to staff.
Bye.
Bye.